How much silver should you own? Is there a magic number of ounces to stack? Is it 100, 500? I've been thinking a lot about this lately, and I wanted to address this topic with y'all because I think it's important for new stackers who might be getting into this hobby to start considering. So let's break everything all down here. Hi everybody, and welcome back to yet another video. I'm a little bit late in posting this one, and I apologize for that. It's kind of been of a hectic week for me, so I'm a little behind on things, but, again, I apologize for that. But just as a reminder, we are doing the live stream this Saturday at 6 p.m. Central Time. As of now, this is the real deal. I shouldn't have to delay it again, and I thank you guys for your patience on this. But again, please remember to subscribe to this channel. If you want to participate in that giveaway, you have to be a subscriber. And funny enough, we are actually very close to 1,000 subs, which is crazy to me because originally I was going to do a 500 sub giveaway, and now we're doing 1,000. And I was actually going to do a giveaway for the 1,000. So maybe we'll do something next month for that. We'll have to wait and see. But either way, that's enough rambling. Let's get back to the video. So I'm going to work my way backwards here a little bit, and I'm not going to give you a list of reasons or explanations to support what the answer is at the end of the video, because I'm going to give it to you here right away in the beginning. Are you ready for it? Well, the answer is impossible to really know, and I'm not using that as a cop-out answer because I can guarantee you that everyone's ideal amount in the comments are going to be different. So it's impossible to really gauge what the correct number is. Each person has a unique number in their head that is correct. And that can be highly debated, but that isn't going to be the point of this video. You as a stacker have an idea of what is good enough. And the right amount of what you should own can actually be calculated to some degree, but that is entirely dependent on what your goal is. And that's the big thing. It's what your goal is. And I'm going to explain the two main categories that I think people mainly fall under. And the number of ounces you should own are going to be dependent on which category that you fall into. So which categories am I referring to? Well, I personally believe, excluding the collectors, because that's a different area of intent, most of us are either a stacker or a prepper, sometimes even a hybrid of both, a prepper stacker, if you will, right? So let me explain my definitions on these. So I view stackers as those who are stacking to preserve their wealth and protecting themselves as a hedge against inflation, a separation from the fiat currency system. A prepper are those who prep for a SHTF type of scenario where a barter system relies on. Not necessarily a removal from the fiat system, but somewhat of that. But again, it's more of a situational type of thing. So, and that doesn't really rely on silver alone. Obviously, that's going to include different things like storing food, water, ammo, etc., those type of things. And obviously the hybrid is a combination of both. But the topic of what to stack isn't going to be covered in this video. It's mainly going to be the amounts of what we want to have depending on which category we fall under. So what amounts could we estimate? Well, let's talk about the stacker group first. And a common amount that you'll hear in the financial advisory world, they've always mentioned something around 5 to 10% of your net worth in precious metals. And there's one interesting chart that I want to throw up that I found recently, and that's the trend in which the financial advisors who are telling their clients are actually telling them to move away from gold, specifically in this chart, but gold and silver would be kind of the encompassed group of the metals, right? And according to this chart, 75% of the advisors recommend 0 to 1% of their exposure into gold, which is insane to me given all the warning signs out there. And even though this is specifically about gold, silver obviously does fall into this mix as well, since the two are generally viewed as a safe haven asset. So I think we've always heard that 5 to 10% rule. But today it seems like 1% is all that someone should have according to the financial experts. And if someone had a net worth of, let's say, 100K, that would literally be $1,000 worth in silver, which is roughly 30 ounces of silver using today's prices, which is insanely low in my opinion. But I think that 10% is generally the common area that a lot of us stackers kind of know. And I personally use 10% of my net worth as a guide or a range to aim for. But I think if you're a stacker, that 10% net worth range is a great place to start with. What about the preppers? Well, they aren't necessarily concerned with weight in terms of numbers. I think they're more concerned about the time frame of things. How long can 1 ounce of silver last in that type of situation? Now, I'm not sure if that can really be known since we obviously haven't experienced it here in the US, but I know other countries have had hyperinflation which created some sort of a barter type of system. However, I'm not sure we really know how much exactly will be needed for that. I've heard things like 1 to 5 ounces can last a person per week. So a family of four may need roughly 4 to 20 ounces of silver to barter with to gather any supplies that they need, assuming they didn't have any or ran out at some point. But again, I think in this group, there is no number. You just need to have as much as you possibly can. Because again, I can't find anything online that really explain any sort of rule of thumb for the correct amount, if that makes sense. I just don't know how things are going to be priced because it just depends on whether or not it'll be determined based off of the weight of silver or by the value attached to it. So I guess, again, in this case, the more intense or harsh scenario that you're willing to prepare for is going to be up to you to decide. I really don't think there's a ceiling or a correct number. You just need to have as much as you possibly can for these type of situations. Between the two, though, I think there is some common ground. I think both groups want as much as possible, and there is a benefit to that because if we stack or prep based off our intent, eventually we can accumulate a large amount, and that will put you in a great position or a greater position regardless of what happens. And as a stacker, you've built generational wealth that you're able to preserve or pass down to your family. And as a prepper, you'll be able to survive for months, if not years, because you've built up a massive reserve. The only issue with this, and probably the actual real answer to the original question of how much silver should you own, is the amount of storage and weight that you're going to accumulate. I guess, again, that's technically, going to be dependent on your residence, I guess. Depending on how many rooms you have, you could technically store a lot of silver, and some of us have more rooms than others, but again, that would just be ridiculous to fill up your entire house with silver. But again, that is the problem that we face, and at some point I think people will just simply look at how much they have lying around and say something along the lines of, yeah, this is a bit too much. I need to offload this somehow. And again, that can be selling it or moving it into gold. Again, that's not a video for this time, but perhaps that is when you've hit the right number. But again, I think it's relative and arbitrary to just your viewpoint and your situation specifically. So what am I personally doing? Well, I've already explained that I'm doing that 10% rule because I don't think one should just dump all of their extra cash or their savings, retirement, etc. into all of this. While tempting as it may be sometimes, I don't think we're in a situation that requires that. But I'm still stacking to reach my 10% goal. And when I do hit that goal, I'm just going to pause for a bit. And I'm going to take the extra money that I would have invested in silver or gold into other areas that will increase my net worth even more, which in turn will allow me to keep purchasing more gold and silver, and the cycle continues. Now, I don't think I'm going to stop because the assets that I currently have are constantly fluctuating, and there will more likely than not be consistent monthly purchases happening. But again, there is a possibility of a pause happening, but Again, I think it would be very short if it did. But right now, I currently have 120 ounces worth of silver, and I still have more to go. One last thing before we wrap up the video. To the new stackers out there, here are a couple things to consider when setting your goal. Number one is to set a budget. Don't go into debt for silver. Just take any extra amount left over that you have and buy some, even if it's just 1 ounce. Which kind of follows into point number 2 is the dollar cost average method. Consistent purchases will build up over time, and you'll eventually see the growth in your efforts. Number 3 is the storage. We talked a little bit about it already, but silver will add up quick, and having tubes, boxes, and safes and secret hiding spots are going to be a focus at some point. You're going to need to protect what you have, so be ready to handle that part when it comes up. And finally, number 4, which I emphasize a lot in this channel, is that this isn't a, in quote, investment. It's not going to make you get rich quick. It's actually very boring. But it's a long-term game with silver and gold. You can't view this with the intent on making a profit. You're not a local coin shop dealer in business. This is to protect you. It's a defensive type of asset. I want to make sure that everyone understands that when they're getting into this stuff. With that being said, guys, let me know what amount you think is enough. Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye, guys.